Now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good afternoon. I'm Gina Ragland with the Nebraska Medical Association. I'd like to welcome you to the 5th in the 2012 Foster Healthy Weight in Youth webinar series, Exercise as Medicine, Promoting Activity for Ourselves and Our Patients. Please note that today's webinar will be recorded. Currently, you are in a listen-only mode at this time. You can type questions at any time during the webinar in the questions chat section to the right of your screen. If a question arises during the presentation, I will cue Dr. Phillips if there is a question and he will address it at that time. Or if you prefer to ask your question in person, you can press the raise your hand button and we will unmute your line during the Q&A at the end of the presentation. If you have any problems seeing or hearing the presentation at any time, please let us know under the questions chat section. We'd first like to thank Dr. Carla Lester with Teach a Kid to Fish and the Nebraska Medical Association's Childhood Obesity Prevention Project, Holly Dingman with the Department of Health and Human Services Nutrition and Activity for Health Program, Dr. Christina Fernandez with the HEROES Program at Children's Hospital and Medical Center, Dr. Sally O'Neill, Jeff Klein, and the staff at Creighton University CME, and Dr. Eddie Phillips from Harvard Medical School for the work they've done to make this webinar possible. I'd like to introduce Dr. Carla Lester, who will talk about the CME credits associated with this webinar and will give the background of the Foster Healthy Weight and Youth model. Dr. Lester is a pediatrician here in Lincoln that started a nonprofit organization called Teach a Kid to Fish. Its mission is to prevent and reduce childhood obesity by empowering Lincoln children and families to eat healthy and be active. Dr. Lester also developed the NMA's Child Obesity Prevention Project. Dr. Lester?
Thank you, Gina. Thank you for everyone who's in attendance today and listening in on the webinar. Thank you to our speaker, Dr. Phillips. We're excited about today's webinar. I just want to go through some logistics here and a few slides. The Creighton University School of Medicine designates this live activity for a maximum of 1 AMA PRA Category 1 credit. The information in this training has been approved for continuing education contact credit hour by the American Medical Association, Creighton University Health Sciences, and the Commission on Dietetic Registration. And a detailed information sheet containing this information accompanied the webinar registration and may be found on the Creighton website. This activity has been planned and implemented by numerous partners throughout the state. Neither the planning committee or speakers for the webinar series have any conflicts of interest or disclosures and have signed statements claiming as such. After the webinar, you will be sent a link to the post-test and evaluation via email. And you may also visit cme.creighton.edu for more information. Foster Healthy Weight in Youth is Nebraska's clinical childhood obesity model. The clinical resources have been and continue to be disseminated to physicians across Nebraska. It is a comprehensive model with a toolkit, pocket reference algorithm, free CME training video which outlines the steps in assessment, prevention, and treatment in the primary care setting. And there are also consistent messaging, patient brochures, and posters to resource your offices with. All of the resources are free and are available through the NMA website. Today's webinar is titled Exercise as Medicine, Promoting Activity for Ourselves and Our Patients. Our speaker is Dr. Edward Phillips from Harvard Medical School. Dr. Phillips is Assistant Professor of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation at Harvard Medical School and Director of Outpatient Medical Services of the Spaulding Rehabilitation Hospital Network in Boston, Massachusetts. Dr. Phillips founded and directs the Institute of Lifestyle Medicine in the Department of Physical Medicine and Rehabilitation at Harvard Medical School. Additionally, Dr. Phillips is a fellow of the American College of Sports Medicine and serves on the executive council that developed and leads the Exercise as Medicine Global Initiative. He is co-author of ACSM's Exercise as Medicine, the Clinician's Guide to the Exercise Prescription, and is chair of the Exercise as Medicine Education Committee. Dr. Phillips is an active clinician and researcher who speaks and consults nationally, guiding a broad-based effort to reduce lifestyle-related death, disease, and costs through clinician-directed interventions with patients. The President's Council on Fitness, Sports, and Nutrition has recognized both Dr. Phillips and the ILM with its Community Leadership Award. He appears on national media, including Good Morning America, ESPN Radio, and Time Magazine. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Phillips. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Lester. Thank you, Gina, and this is a great opportunity to speak to you all in Nebraska and as well There's folks I know joining from the American College of Sports Medicine and folks affiliated with the Institute of Lifestyle Medicine. Make sure I've got control of the keyboard here. If you could advance it, Gina, that would be... Okay, so for today's talk, I'd like to organize things into a series of questions that I'll ask and then try to answer over the next period of time. And we're going to talk about exercise and physical activity. I'd like to share with you through this webinar my passion for what I believe, as do others, is probably the most potent medication that we have available to ourselves and to our patients. And that's simply moving to the amount that the physical activity guidelines for Americans ask us to do, which we'll detail here. So we're going to talk about the definitions, the benefits, and what the guidelines are for exercise and physical activity. And we'll distinguish between those two things. Why are we doing this, or why would you exercise? Well, it prevents death, disease, healthcare costs, all the rage to talk about these days, and it improves your function. Who? Well, we'll start with, we'll call upon physicians, in fact, all clinicians. And when we talk about who should be moving, I'm going to start with you as clinicians. And there's wonderful evidence that we'll touch upon that what you do as an individual in your personal life, how active you are, what you choose to do or not do, whether you lift weights, whether you run, whether you walk or do Pilates, will translate directly into how willing you are and how often you counsel your patients on those exact activities. And how are we going to get you to hopefully engage for yourselves and your patients? Well, two simple things that come from the world of exercise as medicine. We'll ask you to assess physical activity as a vital sign. What could be more vital than knowing how active you and your patients are, and then to respond to that with an exercise prescription. As Dr. Lester kindly noted, I'm a co-author on a book describing this. We'll try to summarize all of that in the next 40 minutes or so. So let's focus first on the what and the why. The first few, I'll teach you how to recognize something written by a committee. This first one describes what is physical activity, and it's any bodily movement by your skeletal muscles that results in energy expenditure above your basal levels, meaning just lying in bed and resting. It encompasses exercise as well as sports and physical activities done for your daily living, whether you use it for work, getting to work, your leisure time. So physical activity is the broader definition, and simply means that your body is placed into movement and you're burning some energy. Exercise is a subset. It's a physical activity that's planned, it's structured, it's often repetitive, and folks are usually doing it because they have some sort of objective, often the improvement of their physical fitness. So physical fitness is the outcome of the exercise. What is physical fitness? Well, that would be the ability to carry out your daily tasks. We want you to be able to do this vigorously and alertly without undue fatigue, ample energy to enjoy the leisure pursuits, and to meet unforeseen emergencies. And there's different parts to physical fitness. Everything from the most famous that people think of when they think of exercise and fitness would be cardiorespiratory, but muscle strength, we're advocating for your body composition, how flexible you are, especially as we age. We're looking at balance, your agility, power, reaction time, etc. These are all elements of physical fitness that can be trained for. If you could advance the slide, that would be. So if you go back one, sorry. If you're not moving your body, meaning if you're not physically active, then we're going to describe you as being sedentary. And sedentary activity is the absence of movement, and that alone, and we're moving very, very little, and it could include watching TV, sitting, playing video games, etc., using the computer, and that's sedentary activity, and that is a risk factor itself for heart disease. So what are the types of exercise? The three-legged stool that we stand on when we do exercise classically includes the aerobic, the strengthening, and the stretching. Posture and balance is advocated especially as we get older. And when we talk about including physical activity versus exercise in our daily activities, most people, when you mention the word exercise, think of the structured time that is in which they set aside a time, a place, often includes changing their clothes, going to a place such as a gym, getting on a bicycle, etc., often being out of breath, sometimes spending money to go to a class, etc. Lifestyle exercise would be integrating physical activity or exercise into the course of your day. That would be parking a little further from the front door, taking the elevator instead of the stairs, standing up while you're listening to this webinar rather than sitting. You could use a standing desk. People are now on treadmill desks. That sort of thing would certainly get you into the lifestyle exercise. Planning a few activities when you park once and walking through a downtown area would be ways of increasing your physical activity through your lifestyle. The benefits of exercise, there's a wonderful, the guidelines have a wonderful report appended to them under Physical Activity Guidelines for Americans, available on the web, and it describes strong evidence for decrease of all of the above listed here, including a lower risk of early death, heart disease, stroke, blood pressure, your blood lipids will improve, metabolic syndrome, many types of cancers, and type 2 diabetes. There's also a prevention of weight gain and weight loss, particularly if you combine it with reduced calorie intake. So as we're now determining, simply taking on exercise to lose weight is usually not effective. However, exercise is a requirement to keep the weight off, which is perhaps the more difficult part of losing weight, and is the maintenance of the weight loss. And of course, exercise will lead to improved cardiorespiratory and muscular fitness, especially older group. Prevention of falls, depression is improved, and better cognitive function. This is not only a wonderful medicine, it's actually a very potent medicine. There's also moderate to strong evidence of better functional health for older adults. This is a favorite area of research and intervention with patients, and I would just pause here to talk about the idea of you as individuals going home and lifting weights or doing resistance exercise. The same weights that I lift at my age, if my father, 30 years older, lifts the same weights, it will have more of an impact on his function. It will allow him to get out of a chair to maintain his independence. And there's evidence now of reduced abdominal obesity, sort of the more dangerous type of fat, by doing exercise. Moderate evidence also reduces all of these listed here, reducing risk of hip fracture, lung cancer, endometrial cancer, again, maintenance of weight loss, improving bone density, and improving sleep. So we're talking about a very potent medication, which is exercise, and we're broadly speaking there of cardiovascular or cardiorespiratory fitness as a result of moving, strength training, or more correctly described as resistance training, has its own set of particular benefits, which are listed here. And some of the, rather than reading through them, which you could do, I'll point out one that it actually improves, the last one listed here, improves glucose tolerance. So there's some literature out now that talks about weightlifting as a treatment for diabetes, which is very interesting. Of course, has all these other effects, improving performance. Aesthetic changes are sometimes enough to get people to do the resistance training, but it's got its own list of benefits here. In this entire talk, I will show, I believe, just one curve, and I'll just pause here to talk about the benefits of getting your body moving throughout the course of the week. On the axis, the y-axis over here, we have the relative risk of all-cause mortality, meaning what's the chance that you're going to die in a period of time. We're going to start arbitrarily with the number 1. And on the bottom, we look at moderate to vigorous leisure time activity measured in hours per week. This would be completely inactive all the way out to 7 hours per week, or about an hour a day. If we start here at about 30 minutes, enough, maybe people are fibbing when we ask how active you are. They're not, but they're moving 30 minutes. We'll assign that a all-cause mortality relative risk of 1. What's interesting on this curve is that as soon as we get your cells or your patients moving an hour and a half per week, this is the second dot, you've already reduced your risk of dying from all causes by a full 20%, from 1 down to 0.8. At about 2.5 hours, the curve starts to flatten out. You've already reduced your risk of dying by upwards of 25 to 30% over those that are completely inactive by simply moving your body for 2.5 hours per week. This is where the recommendation comes from under the physical activity guidelines from Americans to move for a total of 150 minutes per week. And it could be accumulated throughout the week. It need not be, it's probably best not to do it on a single day. It should be spread out, but we're looking to accumulate it. For those that are more active and more fit or continue to move their bodies more, the risk of dying continues to decrease, but just at a slower rate. And this is someone who would be active at a moderate to vigorous level up to 6 or 7 times per week. So what we're focused on is the 2.5 hours in the course of an entire week, or 150 minutes. So that's where we get the recommendations that came out now 5 or 4 years ago in 2008 from the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. 150 minutes of moderate intensity physical activity, which is like a brisk walk, nothing more. If you wish to do vigorous activity, we'll talk about whether you should or shouldn't, but if you're into doing that, or if you want to save some time, you'd only have to do 75 minutes. And we want you to do that exercise in bouts of at least 10 minutes. If you wish to be more active, you will get more benefits. So you'll just double the numbers above and shoot for 300 minutes, about an hour a day, 5 days per week, 5 hours of activity, or 150 minutes of vigorous physical activity. And in addition, the guidelines call for us as clinicians and for our patients and all Americans to do resistance training, muscle strengthening at least twice per week. We usually advise not to do on consecutive days, only because of muscle soreness, but if that were the only time that you could do resistance exercise on a Saturday and Sunday, that's better than only doing it one day or not doing it at all. The recommendations from American College of Sports Medicine came out subsequently in 2011, and they are very close to what we've just talked about, but talk about frequency of 5 days per week, breaking down the 150 minutes into 30-minute sections 5 days per week, or doing the vigorous exercise at least 3 days per week. When we can get into the details of how much resistance exercise to do, this is 40 to 70% of your one maximum repetition. That's how much weight you could lift just one time, and you would do about 40 to 70% of the maximum load. And then we're going to repeat that 8 to 12 times. That would be a set, and do that 2 to 3 sets. Flexibility training does not have sufficient evidence from the federal government, but anecdotally and clinically, there certainly helps, and the ACSM, American College of Sports Medicine, calls upon us to do 2 to 3 days per week of flexibility exercise, holding the stretches for about 60 seconds each. Are we successful in getting the public, as of 2010, to actually make these changes? And not yet, simply put, and that's where I feel so passionate and thrilled to talk to all of you to get you on board to change these numbers. The target of reducing folks to as little, only 20% of the public getting no leisure time physical activity, we are making slow progress towards. From 1997, at 40% of the public doing no physical activity, these are the folks that are completely sedentary, and getting that down to 36%, and we're trying to slowly make some progress there. Folks that are doing regular physical activity at a moderate or vigorous level, we're shooting for 50%. These numbers here report that we flattened out at 32%. Some other numbers show that getting the 150 minutes, we're getting about 40% of the population, but that's still not even half of the population is getting its recommended dose of 150 minutes of the aerobic activity. In terms of those that are doing the strength training or filling the whole recommendation, we're only about 20%. So we're not there yet. We need to make some significant progress here. Sedentary activity was defined back in 1992 as a primary controllable risk factor, and if you're looking at, in those days, 40% of the population being completely sedentary, that has a prevalence twice that of smoking, hypertension, and elevated serum cholesterol. So this is a separate problem that goes way beyond and is something that we need to focus on to get people at least moving in some capacity.
Dr. Phillips,
yes.
We do have a question.
Yes, please.
The question is, I thought regarding resistance training that you need to have a day in between sessions to allow muscles to repair and thus build the lean muscle mass.
So everyone heard the question. So the recommendation, if you're talking clinically to patients, is to do the exercises on non-consecutive days, which would be the jargon to say that, yes, you'd want to have at least a day in between the repetition of the same exercises. Part of it is that, especially with doing resistance exercise, there's a DOMS or DOMS, delayed onset muscle soreness, which will take upwards of 24 hours to sort of declare itself. And so if you've strained yourself on Monday, you wouldn't want to do the same exercises on Tuesday. So there is, as the caller is asking, there is a little bit of sort of a recovery. Usually, this is not so much of an issue. If people want to do resistance exercise and they're doing all major body groups, meaning upper arms, lower arms, your back, legs, we break it down to 8 parts. Often for pragmatic purposes, people will break down those 8 exercises and, for instance, on a Monday do the upper extremities and on a Tuesday move on to the lower extremities. So that would be safe to do. But we're on the same page. We want to get people to sort of not repeat the same exercises as a public health recommendation. Shall I go on? Okay. I fibbed before. There is one more, I believe, one more curve here, and this is a favor that's come up to me, come by my attention recently, and this talks about these are cumulative mortality rates of folks from year 0 out to 14 years, and on the right over here is their sitting time. What's the risk of dying or the risk of remaining alive if you sit almost none of the time, which would be the top curve here, versus those that sit almost all of the time. And there's some pretty dramatic changes there, and this has become all the rage in the literature in the public health world in the last year or so, the idea that even if you're meeting the other recommendations, which we're pushing for, in addition, we still don't want you sitting for prolonged periods of time. And these curves here, with these Kaplan-Meier survival curves, show the much higher risk of dying over the course of 14 years if you're spending most of your day sitting. So I hope by now most of you are on your feet as you listen to this webinar. So just to further this point, in the ACSM's journal, it was written, in addition to exercising regularly, there are health benefits in concurrently reducing total time engaged in sedentary pursuits, and also interspersing frequent short bouts of standing and physical activity between periods of sedentary activity, even in physically active adults. So it's what we're saying before in sort of committee talk, which is basically, get up, move around, go get your the printer off your computer in another room, go get a glass of water, break up the course of the day, try a walking meeting, just something to keep you from sitting for extended periods of time. Boy, I really fibbed because I got my last curve here, which is just showing you once again that the benefits of starting at a low, people that are sedentary, that's A, versus the moderately active or the highly active, that from the perspective of working with our patients, the benefit of getting your inactive patients off the couch and increasing their activity modestly has a much greater change in their health than taking your moderately active patients and getting them walking a little faster and getting your highly active patients and getting them to be even more active. So we're really focused on that big part of our population, which is very, very inactive, in order to gain the benefits here. And you can just see the changes diminish as we get more active. Is there money to be saved by getting more active? And this is a wonderful illustration here that shows that the folks that are active, this is the column 1 here, meaning they're getting their 150 minutes, their health care claims run to about $4,200 per year, whereas those that are completely inactive, their claims run at $5,783. That's $1,500, $1,543 difference. If you look at the money that would be saved from healthcare claims for getting people moving, what adds up to about 130 hours per year of walking, and you divide that in here, the act of walking has a value in terms of bringing down the claim. So it's 1543 divided by the 130 hours of over $12 per hour of benefit of getting people off the couch and moving. So this, once again, is a very potent medicine, and this, according to the claims data there. So bottom line, take-home number 1 is talk to your patients not just about increasing physical activity, but also decreasing their sedentary behavior. There's money to be saved and there's lives to be saved. So let's move on to sort of the second half here in terms of focusing on who should be helping to make these changes, and that's why I'm talking to you guys, and then how to do it. So the first are slides that I borrowed and put together with Bob Salas, who was the mastermind and the moving force behind forming American College of Sports Medicine's effort, which is called Exercise is Medicine, back in 2007, and where he works in Kaiser Permanente. They instituted a physical activity vital sign several years back, and upon entering the medical office, the medical assistant will ask 2 simple questions and put this into the medical record. First question, how many days per week on average do you exercise at a moderate level or greater, like a brisk walk? And the answers here are 0, inactive, all the way up to 7 days per week. The second question that then follows will be, if we can get this to move here, will be how long on average do you spend exercising at this level? So for instance, if you're used to doing 7 days per week or 5 days per week of 30 minutes of exercise, then we're also busy that we have the computer multiply 5 times 30 for this individual here. This is in their record as an exercise vital, and it's described in this case, because we now know the recommendations, as a best practice. This individual is meeting the recommendations here. What's interesting about the way that these questions are asked is that even the weekend warriors who get 75 minutes times twice per week, perhaps an exercise class or a long walk with their dog on the weekend, will get full credit for meeting the recommendation. So this is a physical activity vital sign. It need not be any more complicated than that. The next question is, once you have that data, what to do, and does it make a difference if a physician or another clinician prescribes exercise? So I'll add that question to here and give you a little bit of evidence-based medicine showing in this first study that exercise prescription for brisk walking, this is something that's written down, negotiated, and handed to the patient, in this study resulted in statistically significant long-term improvements in the cardiopulmonary fitness of the individuals receiving that. And there are, as with many studies, some limitations on there, but it's just a hint that actually getting people moving, even if the study is not perfect, shows some of the efficacy of physician intervention. In this study, a 2-year study, which was controlled and randomized, women were given exercise prescription, and they successfully increased their physical activity meeting the guidelines from 10% at baseline up to 43% at 12 months, and then sustained it nearly fully by 24 months at a highly significant level from getting an exercise prescription. So if there is some efficacy to physicians and other clinicians prescribing exercise, are we doing it? Is it something that we regularly do? The data here is a little more chilling. In this study, the question was the national prevalence of lifestyle counseling or referral, in this case with individuals with diabetes, showed that diabetic patients receive counseling about nutrition only about 36% of the time, and for exercise only 18% of the time. So we are certainly lacking in the opportunity to go and intervene with perhaps one of the more needy groups. These are folks that already have diabetes and whose health is going to be improved by counseling about nutrition, of course, and certainly about exercise. And that's not happening according to this study. In this next study, which is very interesting, they asked hypertensive patients, did your doctor ask you about exercise? And only a third of the patients said that they were counseled to engage in physical activity, which is another way of managing hypertension. And what's interesting in this self-reported study, that 71% of the patients said that if they were asked, if they were in the third that were asked, that they actually did follow the recommendations and in fact reduce their blood pressure. And from my clinical experience, we need to continue, we need to ask, we need to continue to ask and to be available to counsel patients, and how we do that we will discuss. So there's certainly a need for physician counseling, and for those non-physicians on the call or listening to this webinar, I apologize, but these are the recommendations, and we're focusing on that, but it applies to nurses and dietitians and all clinicians that have the opportunity to talk about exercise with their patients. But the U.S. Preventive Services Task Force encourages, here it's written as all healthcare providers, to counsel on lifestyle modifications for patients, and they've added the proviso with known risk factors, which I believe are most of my patients and probably most of yours. However, providers usually do not know how and where to begin, and we are limited by lack of time, lack of training, and how to effectively counsel patients on all of these matters, not just exercise, but also nutrition and weight management. And this is where, to a large degree, I focused my clinical work and now my advocacy work and running the Institute of Lifestyle Medicine. So as one piece of this, we'll continue to talk about exercise prescription, and I'll focus you on the heart of the exercise prescription here, which is to negotiate and to write down and to give to the patient your advice with them about the frequency of the exercise or physical activity, the intensity, the type, and the time of how much time they should be doing the exercise. We also want to have some idea about screening, how to progress the exercise, and of course, like with any prescription, watch out for the precautions. This is a blank that you could use or modify, which would be printed out, and you could fill in for the FITT, frequency, intensity, time, and type, the number of days per week, for instance, 5 days per week. The intensity, we're suggesting here the low, moderate, or high or vigorous intensity. In this case, we're asking whether you can talk, which would, or sing. If you can't sing, but you can still talk, you're in the moderate range. If you can do neither and you're out of breath, you're in the vigorous range. How much the person's willing to do in the course of a day. The type of exercise, simply put, is the type the patient's going to do. And if I asked each of you what's the best type of exercise, you may all answer something different, but that's fine. Do the one that you're going to do. For some people, gardening is their best exercise. Swimming, walking is the most popular. And we can use a graph to progress their exercise. You can write this all down, and if you're somewhat obsessive and you try to scribble down everything that we've talked about, the prescription would look something like this: moderate intensity physical activity, 30 minutes per day, 5 days per week, etc. Or you can make it a little bit simpler, as we have from the Exercises Medicine book: walk briskly 30 minutes per day, lift weights twice per week. You give this to the patient, and then we next talk about how they're going to fill the prescription. And this will actually have an impact. If you're moving onto electronic records, this was developed by a resident that I worked with, and she put into our electronic record back in Boston. Week 1, the assignment that was negotiated with the patient was 5 minutes of walking daily. This is for an inactive patient. And week 2, we hope to progress them to 5 minutes walking twice daily. Week 3, etc., slowly pushing up the amount of walking that they were doing. By week 4, in this case, they were up to 20 minutes of walking on their way towards 30. You could have these preset in your computer to work out how to prescribe the exercise for your patient and give that to them. So bottom line, number 2 for you is to provide a written exercise prescription to your patients, and then to follow up in some manner with a call, an email, a text, a letter from your office several weeks later to see how they're doing and see if there's any intervention or any other suggestions that would move them along a little faster. If you're looking for resources that will help with this quest of yours, in other words, all of the things that we're talking about, I invite you to come to the exercisesmedicine.org website. Once again, this is an effort that was started back in 2007 by the American College of Sports Medicine along with the AMA, and the effort at that time and it continues actually now, it's now become a global initiative, is to provide the tools, the resources, the suggestions on where to fill the prescriptions, what sort of programs and individuals and personal trainers and physical therapists and medical fitness gyms, etc., can help fill the exercise prescription, especially for your patients that have some sort of a risk. So we invite you to come to it. The resources are freely available, and you can sign on to the mailing list. The work that I've done over the last several years with an increasing number of people is through the Institute of Lifestyle Medicine, which is based at Harvard Medical School. My specialty is physical medicine and rehab, so it's within our department where we have sought to bring across to the world and help to sort of retrofit the clinicians in the United States and around the world to say that the new realities of modern medical care is that what we're most confronted with, and has been discussed in other webinars in this series, are the increasing obesity, the rates of sedentary behavior that we mentioned earlier in this webinar, and the reality, as I mentioned a little while back, that clinicians are not traditionally trained in how to intervene with our patients and how to effectively get them to change their behavior. What we focused on today was just one small piece, which is assessing physical activity as a vital sign and the exercise prescription. So we take it upon ourselves to partner with many different groups to provide the training, to do the research on the efficacy of retraining or training new doctors and nurses to be effective agents in promoting health and not just to respond to existing illness. So we invite you to come to our website as well, the Institute of Lifestyle Medicine, join the mailing list, and join the cause of trying to bring down the costs and the large degree of preventable death and disease. The book that was mentioned earlier is ACSM's Exercise is Medicine. We very simply thought that even if you never buy the book or never open it, why not just put an exercise prescription on the cover so people can readily get the idea that this is an easy intervention. If you're interested in further training, a little deeper dive into how to prescribe exercise through our website, we invite you to come to the Harvard Medical School Department of Continuing Education. This is a one-credit CME course on, and it's a case on how to prescribe exercise, which you're invited to participate in. And you can come to harvardlifestylemedicine.org to obtain that. Just a few courses that may be of interest for a little bit of a deeper dive through the Institute of Lifestyle Medicine. Now, in our 4th year, we run a course called Active Lives, Transforming Ourselves and Our Patients. In this course, over 2 days coming up in November 2012, we invite you to learn much more about exercise and physical activity, the science, the behavioral aspects, how to actually intervene with patients, and we take frequent breaks to actually do exercise and to learn how to train our patients in exercise, which is breaks up the day and is very enjoyable and transformative for many clinicians. We also run a 2-day course in the spring, Lifestyle Medicine, Tools for Promoting Healthy Change, which is a little bit broader than exercise and focuses on nutrition, stress management, smoking cessation, etc., and a similar group of very forward-thinking clinicians getting together, really looking to improve the care that they have. In Healthy Lifestyles for Health Professions Conference is coming up in Nebraska City this coming May. Based on some of the courses that we've done at the Institute of Lifestyle Medicine, the focus of this course will be healthier workplaces and clinics, clinicians as wellness role models, and I promise to talk about that briefly, which is simply put the evidence that shows that what we do as individuals is what we're willing to counsel on, and that can include obviously exercise, as we talked about, but your choice of whether to use sunscreen, get your colonoscopies as a recommended prevention, translates directly into the compliance of your patients and following through on those same recommendations. So we really need, for our own sake, but also for our patients' sake, to be better wellness models. And then the evidence-based research on wellness counseling or health coaching, which is now becoming more popular with improving evidence to its efficacy. So a few bottom lines for you, and then I'd love to open this up to some questions and discussions. Number one, record your patient's exercise regimen and log it in the medical record. It's something you can come back to, like a vital sign we've talked about, and see how your patient is progressing in the effort to improve and maintain a higher level of physical activity. In the world of motivational processes, external motivators are not as good as internal ones. However, there remains one very strong external motivator. People, in many cases, still choose to try to please the doctor and will embark on an exercise regimen for several weeks. We then work to progress to internal motivation when the patients begin to notice results. Another message for you is to keep on repeating the message. I've said that several times. You need to do that with your patients. They may not hear it the first 2, 3, 4 times, but eventually, if you keep on asking, you'll get a better net of patients responding to that, to your effort to get them to increase their physical activity. When you've got a fish on the line and they're interested in partaking of increased exercise, don't focus on the exercise threshold. Many folks clinically or anecdotally that have been very active in the past, when you ask them to get off the couch, they figure, I'll just go for a run tonight. And that's not often prudent and can lead to more injuries. So we ask you to sort of tone it down from starting off at the vigorous level if people are resuming exercise after being sedentary, and to maybe get them to start at a moderate level. For instance, walking 3 miles an hour would be sort of a pedestrian gait. 4 miles an hour, they may be getting into the moderate or in some people a vigorous range, but you just want to push them mildly. So once again, the sedentary patient should not be counseled to exercise at a hard level. That's what leads to the higher dropout rates and the injuries. Once again, exercise yourself. Look around your community. Become familiar with the various types of exercise, what's available to different groups, whether it's a Silver Sneakers program, whether there is a yoga class given through adult education, When you start collecting success stories of your patients, not to violate the HIPAA requirements, but sharing those stories with other patients is a very potent intervention if done appropriately, to talk about other folks that have overcome their medical issues by becoming more active. When you're asking about patients and their exercise history, always be sure to focus on what's been most enjoyable. Let's not make exercise and physical activity a chore, but maybe remind someone that what we called recess as kids, which was all we wanted to do and get out of school, we could take recess now from the work site or from our activities and responsibilities at home to go out for a brief walk, take a little recess, take a little break, enjoy it. And so we like to focus on the enjoyment part of that. Set realistic goals, accumulating physical activity. The 150 minutes need not be done all at once. It shouldn't be. Even the 30 minutes a day can be broken down. Talk about the general and mental health benefits of exercise, meaning the fact that they'll think more clearly and perhaps be happier and sleep better that night, and also the risks of remaining sedentary. But again, back to the pleasure of exercise. Write the prescriptions, the exercise prescriptions on a script. There's a special potency to delivering the prescription. So again, these are the resources that we mentioned, Exercise is Medicine, as well as the Institute of Lifestyle Medicine. And we have the courses that we mentioned. So Gina, I'd be delighted if there was any questions to open it up for them.
Thank you, Dr. Phillips. We will now open the webinar up to any questions you might have. Again, you can type your question in under the chat or questions portion at the right side of your screen, or you can press the raise your hand button and we will unmute your line. And Dr. Phillips, we do have a question here. It says, do you feel that the resistance of health insurance companies to fund fitness programs has led to the limitation of growth of physical activity in the United States?
So I'm sorry, the question is, have they been resistant? The folks that are, I'll sort of answer this in the positive, the folks that are going to sort of save the money that we talked about as people become more active and are going to see those benefits are, in a strange way, not often the insurance companies, and what they explain, and I've spoken to several folks from the insurance industry, is that people change their insurance programs too often for them to invest heavily into wellness. Now even that's changing, but folks that work for large self-insured companies, so that's about 70 million Americans that are working for large companies, that, and the larger the company, probably the better chance of them self-insuring. We know that people, especially these days, once they have a job, are much more likely to stay with it for the several years where you're going to see the turnaround on the investment. So now we've reached a point where in the work site, for those employed Americans, that the majority of the employers are now offering some sort of wellness benefit, and it varies from a pedometer program to very elaborate web-based programs, and even gyms at the website, and weight loss programs, etc. So the insurance companies are getting more interested, but probably right now the employers are a little bit more forthcoming, and ultimately it's the government at the highest levels that's going to sort of accrue the benefits of a wellness dividend, the money savings from a healthier population.
Dr. Phillips, the next question is, do you ever prescribe or emphasize getting a dog? Seems like that motivates some people to get off the couch and around the neighborhood park.
So this is sort of a famous prescription for, obviously, for people that are interested in the dog and are going to take care of the dog. However, there's a sad rejoinder to this, and these are reports of dogs with increasing levels of obesity and diabetes because their owners are not taking them for the necessary walks. So I'm a dog owner, and I would love to say that that's an answer, and it probably is for some people. But I would just be sure that we're not just putting another responsibility on folks, and that they're really going to live up to it and take folks for a walk. So once again, it's kind of like the issue about type of exercise. If that's the type of exercise someone wants, and it's going to get them out and get them more social because they're going to go to a group where other dogs are being walked, and you get out of the house, then why not? But it's not a universal fix.
Okay, Dr. Phillips, we have a question now from Jackie Bertelson. Jackie, your line is now open. Are you there, Jackie? Okay, we'll move on then to the next question is by Jill Jank. Jill, your line is now open. She's not answering either, Dr. Phillips.
Okay.
Let me see. The next question is, can you email slides of this presentation? And I don't know what your thoughts are on that, Dr. Phillips. If you'd like, I can email those out to attendees.
That's fine. Or else they're available through your. Aren't these available for the next 2 years through the as a CME program?
That's what yes, the recordings are available for 2 years after.
Right.
We don't always post those to the website, but we can do whatever your preference
okay.
is. The next question is, what specific recommendations do you have for children to decrease the obesity among children?
Wow. So I'm not a pediatrician. I'm not a child care specialist, but I'm certainly involved in this, and I've got my own kids. I'll start off with the recommendation that setting a good example for kids is extremely important. The idea, for instance, in our household, that where the kids understand that a timeout activity, like we used to do when they were misbehaving as young kids, now has evolved into things we can't talk right now. I need to go for a walk, or one of us needs to go for a run. This is the adult talking to the kid to normalize the idea that physical activity is part of an everyday planning, meaning that my wife and I will actually talk about, just like we're planning out meals, what are we going to have this evening, how much leftovers will there be, what are we having for dinner, what are we doing for exercise today, when is there time there. Kids will pick up on this, and they will begin to integrate it. Probably the most important time to make a transition, as we're seeing in the public health world, is middle school kids that often give up organized sports activities and then are often left with nothing. So the idea of really being focused at those kind of tween years to replace some sort of activity for the kids is really important. From there, it's a matter of just kind of meeting the kids where they are and recognizing that they're going to go through developmental stages. And I'll share one that I've got one child who adores biking, but for social reasons wouldn't be, as she would say, wouldn't be caught dead biking to high school, but will readily bike on the weekends. Whereas once you get on the college campuses, bikes are the way of getting around and are become normalized again. So just recognize the kids are going through different stages. Anything that you can do in your community to integrate physical activity once again back into the schools where we've often lost it, that's more of an advocacy level. But the other message that's coming through in the public health circles is that we're certainly not doing well with the obesity interventions. So we may want to just sort of refocus on just keeping the kids active. So that's my collective wisdom on working with kids.
Dr. Phillips, the next question is, do you see a place for health and wellness coaches?
Yes. So the question about health and wellness coaches, so when we look at, for instance, the Institute of Lifestyle Medicine, and we're trying to train folks in how to, the science of exercise, nutrition, et cetera, which doctors and nurses learn pretty readily, try to engage them as health models, as we've talked about, give them the tools that we've talked about. Now we're left with the last part, which is how do you actually engage the patient and how do you follow through with them. So the role of health coaches, which I work closely with, I'm trying to integrate the conversation about getting started on a physical activity program, for follow-through, for keeping patients accountable for goal setting, for promoting the physical activity over the long term with more time than I have to spend with the patients, that's when I'll often call in a health coach. And that the models are various here, from having a health coach in your office to reaching them through the telephone or the web, to training the health staff, in other words, the nurses and the exercise physiologists and the physicians to become health coaches or have that capacity. All of those things are valuable. There's various models, and I believe that that's becoming, thankfully and appropriately, an important part of the landscape of how we're caring for our patients moving forward.
The next question is, are the benefits of increased exercise and decreased sedentary behavior seen without weight loss?
The answer is absolutely. One of the sort of the fundamental ways, or one of the favorite responses I have from patients are they begin dutifully doing their physical activity increase. They're doing resistance training, and they come back in with evidence that they can walk further, they could walk faster, they could lift more weights, and yet they haven't lost any weight. And I have patients who have said, I haven't lost weight, but I'm losing my pants, meaning that the abdominal obesity has decreased. They're literally in a new size of pants, and yet they now have more muscle mass as they're building it up in their arms and legs, and the scale has not changed. Now their body composition has changed, so that's a little bit more of a nuanced message to folks. But so there's huge benefits functionally and health-wise from folks that are getting more active. And then separate from that, even if the weight does not change, and even if they're not building up a lot of muscle mass, there's so many benefits, as we talked about earlier, from physical activity that are protective against many of the problems of obesity, for instance, the diabetes, the high blood pressure, etc. So the message here very decidedly is, let's get the folks moving. And for my patients, if they maintain their weight, we congratulate them for saying, that's good. You know, what did you do this week that you couldn't do last week? Gina?
Okay, another question, are these modules available on the website? And I'm not sure if they're meaning our website. If it is our website, no, they're not. And I don't know, Dr. Phillips, if you have direction to where they can find those modules on yours.
It's going to be hard to ask which modules. We have additional training programs, as I mentioned, for instance, a deep dive on exercise prescription. The link to this program, it'll be for other people to watch and get their credits, will be up for 2 years, I believe. There's also many other materials on our website and a number of resources on the Exercises Medicine website.
Dr. Phillips, it's Lifestyle Medicine for Weight Management module.
I mean, that would be this. Oh, so that is available through the Harvard Medical School website, the one that I showed. So the best way to get to it is if you go to harvardlifestylemedicine.org. That one is available through the Harvard Medical School Department of Continuing Education, and that's been up for several years. And the lifestyle medicine courses that we've had have been completed by, my gosh, 5,400 people in more than half the countries of the world. So we invite you to take those. So that's up, and those are continuously updated.
Okay, the next question is, the future changes in receiving oncology care treatment in 2014 affects those over 72 years. So what about if a certain BSA is greater than 40?
This is for, I'm sorry, for oncology?
Yeah, that's what this question is coming up, and I will ask for clarification on
okay.
that. And it looks like,
if the question is about, if this is about a super obese, a BMI of over 40.
Do you see a change in premiums with higher BSAs in populations, Dr. Phillips?
A change in the premiums for insurance companies? I really cannot comment. However, if you look when I look for the changes that need to be made in public health and in lifestyle medicine, I look to what's the changes that have happened with tobacco over the last 50 years, where the insurance companies have for decades now had an increased premium because for people that choose to use tobacco products to smoke or otherwise use them. I believe that they may opt to increase premiums for people of above a certain weight. Probably, if we look at it from the exercise level, what may be more effective, or what I might advocate for, is not to focus on the weight once again, but to focus on what's more modifiable, which is your level of physical fitness, the outcome of your physical activity. So we're getting into a little bit of a thorny issue, but I could see certain insurance companies saying that we know that it costs less for us to take care of you if you're physically active, if you have some modicum of fitness, so therefore we're going to invoke a test. We'll see what happens with that. I would stay away from the weight question and go more towards physical fitness as an outcome, or your level of physical activity.
Dr. Phillips, we're approaching the end of our time limit for the webinar. We have one more question before we close things up. The person wants you to discuss briefly the liability issues.
Whenever there's a large enough audience, people always bring up liability. I will say that it's the responsibility, I believe, of the clinician, of the physician, to provide the best care to patients. I would be interested flipping the question on its head to say that the risk of prescribing exercise and getting people active, when we know that the risks of becoming active are so small and that serious complications are very, very small with doing judicious amounts of screening, whereas the risk of not advocating for physical activity, of flip it on its head and say, when can we sue a doctor for not prescribing exercise, for allowing their diabetic overweight patient to remain sedentary, when we know that the risks of sedentary behavior are universal? That's the day I'm looking for. So I believe that there's a negligible risk for prescribing exercise when done judiciously. You're going to look through their medical history. There are some screening tools, and we're going to ask people to work at a low to moderate level to start with. Not prescribing exercise, it may in the future be considered a liability.
Okay, Dr. Phillips, one last question, and then we are going to cut the webinar off. How long should we give patients to change their behavior before we refer them to a weight management program?
I think you need to give people a chance and we need to engage them where they are, meaning there are some folks that you're going to know as you get more tuned to this clinically that probably the first setting, they're going to do better with getting out of your office and going to a professional, a group of professionals that focus on weight management. Other folks will very dutifully say, just give me a couple of months to join the gym and to increase my physical activity and to at least cut out the sugared drinks. Let's get back. So maybe that's 2 months, and then you give them a second chance. So I don't think there's a clear answer. I think you have to be attuned with your patient and ask them when they want to be referred. I think the level of the clinician in their comfort in this, what sort of resources they have in the office, whether there's a health coach there, whether there's good community gyms, may change community by community or practice by practice how quickly you refer on to a weight management center.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Phillips. We're going to close off the webinar, but I want to remind everyone that to receive the educational credits, you'll need to go to the link that's emailed to you in the coming hours following the webinar. You will complete the evaluation to receive one continuing medical credit, continuing education credit hour. This is for the American Medical Association Category 1 credit, Nurses Association, and the Commission on Dietetic Registration. Again, that post-link and evaluation link will be emailed to you following the webinar in the next couple of hours. Thank you for joining us.
Hello? Hello?